There we go.
I'm just going to turn these lights on behind me here.
There
I think that'll
Sure.
look a little nice. Just one sec.
I didn't even set up my lights, John.
No. You might want to go take care of that.
This set's not really for me to sit down with, and our Vic's Basement set's kind of a mess right now, so I thought I'd just do this one right now. Is that okay?
I wouldn't worry about it too much. We just spent the last 5 minutes making sure John's elliptical didn't get in the camera, so I wouldn't be too concerned with how your lighting is. This is this is Megadad, so our bar is only so high.
I know, but let me take a second and try to make my thing look a little bit better for you guys. Well, that's better. Just brighten it up a little bit.
So I just blacken my screen completely.
Yeah, could you just turn your camera off, John?
Do you have a bag that you could put? No, I'm sorry.
He's already part of the family. So, thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah.
First off, you just said your Vic's Basement set, so I'm already beginning to think that's not your actual basement. Is this whole a lie? This whole thing a lie?
I'm from television, man. So yeah, we have sets. Yeah,
Okay.
That's the way that we've always worked. Are we going now? Is that what's happening?
We'll just go right into it.
Okay, go for it.
So, we are joined here on Megadad's Live by industry icon, media king of video game journalism, Victor Lucas. Victor Lucas, I'm sure all of our listeners know who you are already, but why don't you just tell the folks a little bit about yourself, both as a professional in the industry and who's Victor Lucas the dad, and how the hell did we get you on Megadad's Live?
Well, I was lucky enough to meet you guys at E3 earlier this year, and that was super cool. You guys were very, very nice. And you got my name right. Thank you very much. And I've been covering video games for a long time, and I really I lucked out by having a pretty cool idea that just made a lot of sense to me at the right time, and I talked to the right people, and it wasn't easy, but I was able to get on television, and then we had 25 seasons of Electric Playground that aired on television, and another 14 seasons of our other show called Reviews on the Run that aired on television. Both of those shows became daily shows, so we became kind of like a persistent deal in a lot of people's lives and a lot of people's living rooms, which was, completely mind-blowing to me. And I've just spent half my life now covering the video game scene, and I had a passion, obviously, from the beginning, and I continue to have that passion. And now I make television for the internet is kind of how I'm looking at it, just mostly because I got tired of waiting for deals to happen in the TV world. So I just started making content again, like I've been doing forever.
Sure. We're not really, as our listeners know, we're not so much of a guest kind of a podcast. John and I do this monthly, and it's kind of just like a bullshit session where the two of us can talk games, geek culture, parenting, all that kind of stuff.
That's because nobody wants to talk to us.
Well, that's true.
No.
You guys,
You're the first person to say yes.
So well.
We're doing great, right? We've had a few guests, but I feel like you are kind of different because both John and myself, we're brothers, in case you weren't aware.
Okay.
We had you on our TV a lot, from G4 through to EP Daily. I feel like I kind of have to probe you a little bit and kind of get the backstory about how that all started. EP, I was doing a little bit of homework. 1995, is that the inception? So,
right. Yeah. I mean, that's when we got on the internet. The idea was that the year before, and it came out of just wanting to figure out what the hell I was going to do with my life. I was an actor and a waiter, which is the cliche, but I was pretty good at both. But I got really fed up waiting for someone to kind of understand that I had more to offer than, coming in and saying room service. I remember feeling like I did commercial auditions, and that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. I used to go and audition for all kinds of stuff. I got a few, and I got some some TV roles and some stage roles, and I'm very grateful for those experiences. But I remember not getting a part, and all I had to say was walk in and deliver food and say room service. And I was like, okay, what does it take to, this is what I do. I deliver food to people all day as a waiter, and I can't get a role as a guy that says room service. Okay. But I thought, that and some of the embarrassing commercial auditions that I went out for was just like, man, am I going to just like grovel for work like this forever? Or am I going to come up with something that I'm going to help to define and feel good about and feel like I'm contributing? And I threw 100 different ideas down, and the idea that I really zeroed in on was an Entertainment Tonight, Siskel and Ebert hybrid show around the video game culture, because I wanted to know more, and I figured that there were tons of people out there that probably felt the same way. And I saw, 14 or 15 video game magazines. I was collecting them all, by the way, every month on racks, and I was spending $300 a month on video games. And I was into acting and the arts and all that stuff, but I was also a massive gamer, and I thought there must be other people like this. And so I drafted up a 3-pager on what the concept was, and started talking to game companies and television companies at the same time. And nobody ever said it was a bad idea. Everybody said it was a good idea, but everybody was wondering why it hadn't been done before. And the reason was...
That's kind of the thing, is like, you really pioneered something. I mean, there, like you said, there was Electronic Gaming Monthly and Game Fan and Game Informer, but that hadn't broken through the TV space. So where did that vision come from? Entertainment Tonight used to be good, and I don't mean to throw trash at them, but they used to have a cool show. It used to be about talking to people that actually created things and visiting sets and talking about the manufacture of dreams. And that was very inspiring to me. And I felt like I would love to participate in something like that, about a medium that was totally being ignored. There used to be a show in Canada called Video and Arcade Top 10, and I was in my 20s when that was on, and it was just an embarrassing show because it was A, engineered for children, but B, sort of preying on their desires to obtain whatever Nintendo game was being marketed to them. And Nintendo was the major partner and sponsor for them, and it was a good deal for Nintendo, but it just looked like this terrible infomercial that was just, sure, people reading the backs of boxes up on stage. And I just thought, there's got to be more, there's got to be a cooler way to talk about this stuff, and let's go find out who actually makes this material and talk to them and visit these studios. And I think what it took was like a real persistence on my part, and I really kind of was able to convey the concept in a pretty clear way that people understood. And I think people saw in me that I was really fired up to do this, and I was willing to go the distance. And so people started to take some chances with me. And I hadn't produced anything before, but I had assembled a pretty eclectic and talented group of people already that were fired up to go on this. And I think what it is with stuff that people don't need but they want is you kind of have to make that sell job very easy to understand. It almost has to be this thing that exists, and people go, well, why? Of course it should be there. It's like they dug it up and there was already. And I think that's what Electric Playground kind of was. It was one of these preconceived kind of concepts that just seemed so clear. And I was just the guy that was saying it. And of course it made sense that there was a show like this talking about video games. And I think people just sort of got behind the concept and said, okay, well, let's give these guys a shot. And we had to go and self-syndicate at the beginning. And it was interesting because we went on a road trip down the west coast of the States, and I visited TV stations all the way down to Los Angeles. And we got our first signature at a Bellingham, Washington station called KVOS, which broadcast into Vancouver. Sat down with the general manager, showed him our demo thing that we had shot, and
And it was pretty cheeseball, but it was fun, and it was from the right place. And he watched it, and he said, "Yeah, that's good. I would like this show." And he said, "What would you need from me?" And I said, "Well, how about a letter?" And he said, "Okay, when would you like that?" And I said, "Well, how about right now?" And so he sat down at his typewriter, I think. I don't think he had a computer. And he drafted his letter and signed it, and that was our first TV station to sign on, and we had official confirmation of that, and we got a few more, and then we went to there's a convention for television called NATPE, which is not unlike E3, but it's all about TV shows and syndication, and we had some good, interesting conversations, always interesting conversations with different types of broadcasters and networks and things. But one of the things that came out of it is I met with a lot of people from two Canadian outlets that are no longer Canadian media juggernauts. One of them was the Chum Group, which ran Much Music here in Canada and Space and stuff. They eventually sold to Bell, the huge mobility company, or the huge communications company. But I met with the Chum folks, and I met with the Craig folks, and I told them we had U.S. deals already, and that was like, wow, you guys have sold into the States already? Of course, yeah, we'll take it. And so we piecemealed this network across Canada and down the west coast of the States, and scraped up some money from sponsors, and we went ahead with our first 13 episode season in 1997. And I still have the TV guide from our San Francisco affiliate, KBHK. We got great ratings there, by the way. I sound like Donald Trump. And but it had the guy that's on Price is Right now. What's his name? Drew Carey. It was the Drew Carey show back then, but he was on the cover. And then, you flip through the pages, and there was Electric Playground on the weekend there. And we toughed it out. We had to scrape money together. I eventually sold the company to, I sold the concept that I created around Electric Playground and the idea of making a TV show and, pretty elaborate web partnerships to Boss Studios or Boss Game Studios. They used to make video games, but they also had an entertainment division. They were all owned by this other huge conglomerate called Orca Bay. And there was also cell phone money and all of that. They were amazing partners, though, and they kind of escalated us to another level. They sold us to another group. That was a terrible experience, but we kept making content, and that ended in me being able to buy the rights back to everything for my severance, basically, and got some editing equipment out of there. And then in 2002, G4 was launching, and I negotiated a deal to do 6 episodes of Judgment Day, which was our first show with G4, which was Tommy and I reviewing video games every week. And all we had in 2002, we had no contracts, no deals, nothing in place for EP anywhere, but we had this little bit of money coming in from our Judgment Day deal, and it was all based on if those 6 did all right, we would get another order for maybe 6 or 7 more. And so we just kept stacking them, and my team was amazing all the way through, and prepared to just give everything they had to make a good show, and we all saw the opportunity, and we worked our butts off, and there was always this threat that it was going to end, that it was going to not go forever, because most TV doesn't, and somehow we just kept getting a contract after another contract. We started working with Turner. We did the Game Tap News show for them, and won an Emmy for that work, and we did the first HD show with a show called The Art of Play, which was for Rainbow Media. They had a network, I think, called Gameplay or something. And we just kept rocking and rolling. And then we partnered up with Rogers in Canada, and they became one of our strongest broadcast partners, period, because they had an appetite to, first of all, we produced a show for them called Lab with Leo Laporte, which was working with Leo from the old Tech TV days. We did a year's worth of that show. And then they said they wanted to go in a different direction and needed more entertainment-focused stuff. And we said, well, why don't we make EP daily? And they said, yeah, that sounds great. And so we started making hundreds of episodes of EP a year. And we did that from 2008 to 2010. And then they said, well, let's go for a little more, and let's make Reviews on the Run daily. And so we made Reviews on the Run daily from 2010 to 2014, and EP daily from up until 2015. And we grew in scale and had teams in different cities, and covered everything cool every single day. And so that's what I've been trying to kind of maintain with a much smaller footprint, but with also the immediacy of the internet and a lot of the disciplines that we sort of picked up along the way making our TV content. But I've had a tremendous, good fortune and good luck, and I've also worked hard to have that luck, and tried my best to be a good partner with the people that we work with along the way.
It sounds from your story, and man, that's an incredible story, because like I said, John and I were along for the ride. I mean, I remember when G4 launched and just thinking it was the greatest thing ever. And yeah. I will say this, out of all the shows that they produced, so many of them seemed so scripted and so canned, and you could tell they were actors.
Yeah.
But you and Tommy, like, you brought it. You could see the dedication to the medium that you guys had. But you talk about all this, and I get like a mix of both, fondness for those days, and also kind of like you're kind of done with the bureaucracy of deals and partnerships. Is there a little bit of liberation in what you have now with just being online, or do you miss it? Do you wish are there still efforts to put EP back on television?
I love what we're doing now, absolutely. But you're absolutely right. I mean, we did have the freedom and the autonomy, partially because we were alone still in the space. There were, like the Game Trailer show started up, and that ran for a while, and X-Play, and some of the G4 content. But EP was kind of a distinct thing because we were a broadcast show, on major stations, especially in Canada for a long time, and then in the States, in our last few years, we were on all kinds of amazing stations. But people left us alone. They trusted what we were all about, and they trusted our disciplines and our strategies with this stuff. And yeah, I was never a prompter guy. We were never sort of focused so much on worrying about the script. And I don't mean to offend any writers or anything like that out there, but I felt like always that it was more important to have a very personal, real, non-scripted, honest conversation with people through the camera. And I felt that people really picked up on that. And a huge inspiration from that, or to achieve that, was the arguments that Siskel and Ebert would have. Those moments were magic, right? Like they would turn away from reading the prompter and the sort of note for note stuff that they had to do to deliver their things about the movie, and then they would talk to each other and they would get into it, and that moment was always television magic every week. And so I wanted to tap into that. And the other huge influence was the Much Music VJ kind of style of delivery in Canada. I didn't really know it at the time, but they were such a renegade way of producing. It stems from not having too many people and just being self-sufficient. And it's a good philosophy, especially in this internet age, right? And so I kind of feel like we were making very internet-friendly, honest television for a decade and a half, maybe, before YouTube and the internet video stuff started to happen. And so it's been a pretty, at least production-wise, it's been a pretty easy transition for me to talk to the camera this way. And so I would like to do that again with a broadcaster that understands the power of reaching people through things like this, through vehicles like yours and through YouTube and everything like that. And I'm certain that they exist out there, but I don't have I'd rather, and I've always felt this way, I would rather make things than talk about making things. I've always produced like that. I could always have waited for bigger deals and negotiated here, negotiated there, and pitted people together. And, I turned down some things and chose some things that were less about a big payout and more about a continued amount of production work, because I like that idea. The reward isn't the payoff. For me, the reward is being able to make this happen and work and feel good about your life every day. Otherwise I would have produced something else. If I didn't really give a shit about being a producer in this medium, I would have just been a producer, because I've got the chops to produce anything. Trust me, by this point, right? I could have made any kind of reality garbage that you could dream of, but I hate that shit, and I don't want to be involved in it. And I would rather do this and make less money, but at least be able to do this kind of work. And I'm certain that there is a broadcast partner that would fit with the rhythms that I have that would see the wins in working with me and helping me foster another team of people that could kick some serious ass in this space. But I know that there's a lot of worry and concern and frustration and risk aversion in that world right now. And because there aren't a lot of other, competing entities out there that are having success in this space in television, there's no clear solution for me to just point over there and say, see, they're doing that, but you could do this. And a lot of what I've learned has been about resource management and keeping things lean and efficient and user friendly and real. And I'd like to do that, but I don't want to spend all my days pitching and talking about this stuff and saying we should try. It gets frustrating doing that. So I did have some people in 2016 that I was having dialogue with, and I can't be angry or pissed off or frustrated or anything, because it's just such a weird, tumultuous time in media. But they just went nowhere. It just went nowhere, and it felt like things were going to go somewhere, and it didn't go anywhere. And it was at the end of 2016 where I realized we've got an audience. It's not enormous. It's not the same footprint that we had, but it's growing, and I think people are responding well to the type of content that we're making. I'm having a good time. The small team that I've been able to put together is having a good time. The sponsor partners that are already participating with us respect the commitment and the quality of the work that we're doing. Let's just keep going and let's make it. And I would love there to be another partner that says, oh yeah, let's take your skill set and your experience and your partnerships with the media and these relationships that you've had for so long, and let's make something really special with you, and let's see where we go with all this. But I'm not in the stage of my life where I want to just knock on doors and go, and I just don't want to do that.
What do you think? Because we've seen a lot. There was that point where video games on TV was a thing. Spike had awards. Jeff Keighley had a television show. The whole G4 network just crumbled. Do you think that has more to do with the paradigm of television programming and the transition there, or more like the Twitch, YouTube era of gamers getting their content, or do you think it's an even mix of both? Like, what's your take on that?
Well, I think it's ludicrous to think of television and the internet as competing entities. I think you have to think of television and the internet as two vehicles to reach people. We're in the information world, this is what we do. So I feel like TV broadcasters that don't understand that they need to be on television and in the online space concurrently, to the benefit of all of their advertiser partners. Because let's face it, every broadcaster out there has just got a Rolodex filled with partners that have supported their business for years, and maybe they're seeing a little bit of that dwindle. You can't roll up the wagons and put up the white flag and say, well, this category of people's interest can only be covered over there. If you're a broadcaster, like if I was running one of these networks, and I haven't had the real sort of desire to go into that direction either, but if I were, I would be like, well, you know what? There's lots of competition out there, and it's going to be hard. But a lot of the competition that exists out there doesn't have the tenacity or the resources or the experience or the partner relationships that we have. Let's go full bore and deliver this on television and give it to Facebook and give it to YouTube and give it to Twitch. And we'll just accumulate that entire audience and offer that back to our partners. And that's what I want to do. Like, I would rather be working with somebody that understands, is less about protecting how people watch it and more about proliferating the content in as many ways as possible to the benefit of the viewership and the advertiser partners that exist out there. But it's hard to convince these broadcasters that are all doing exclusivity deals and licensing deals that are very structured and frankly about much bigger money than news magazine style content really costs. So me like EP and Reviews, but every other entity out there that's been trying to build sort of information-based news magazine style material around this stuff for television has been faced with the idea that we're just small potatoes compared to the bigger things and the bigger concerns, because obviously there's a lot of piracy and a lot of people watching these huge expensive shows for free on the internet. And so it's hard to change that sort of perspective, but it is happening. Like CBS launching their CBS app, and obviously Netflix sort of storming the Emmys and things like that. There is definitely a mind share shift with broadcasters, but that the budgets for stuff like this is just small. And you know what? I include our colleagues and the people that we know over at ET and Access and all of those shows as well. They've all been hammered too. Their budgets have shrunk like crazy. I don't know if you guys watch those shows anymore, but they've had to deal with a lot of shift, a lot of change. But within those silos, they also have some pretty sophisticated ways to reach people through the internet. TMZ is actually a perfect example for that. So not that I'm a fan of any of that junk, but it's you gotta be everywhere. And so it does bother me that there aren't broadcasters that don't recognize that opportunity, because I do feel like, here's the way I feel. Esports are fantastic. It's a great thing that's happening for video games, and I totally applaud all of the great work that's happening to engender esports into people's lives. But it's just, to me, it's a small sliver of the value of this industry. It's like the sports section of video games, which is great. But it's not the entirety of the industry. The entirety of the industry is massive in scope, and it needs to be covered in a more holistic, accessible way, and it isn't. And part of that stems from the games themselves just being so much about clubhouses, and this is my sector. You only come in here if you're a fan of here, you're a fan over here, you're a fan there. This is for this fan base, this is this community. And like, movies don't operate like that, and TV shows don't operate like that. Books, music, nothing really, except for games, where it's just like, well, I'm a Nintendo guy. I'm only League of Legends. I only like esports. I only like real-time strategy. It's like, what? And I think also that becomes a problem if you ever want to, program for a video game network, and suddenly you're going, well, we need a show that's just for RPG fans. We need it. And all of that is kind of bullshit at this point, because what you really want to be doing is drawing that net out as wide as you can to bring in as many people to watch and be engaged by the content start to finish, but also to, hopefully, and this was always my idea with EP, is to get people engaged enough that they want to go off and be a part of the industry too and make better games, and you do that by growing the conversation and increasing the bandwidth a little bit, so that it's more inclusive and less about these exclusive clubs that it just boggles my mind. I've been to every E3, and it would be very hard for me, apart from the signage and the advertising, to tell you the difference between one year into the next, and that's terrible. The business needs to be more inclusive in general. Period.
After covering the industry for over 20 years and being to every E3, what do you see that still gets you excited? What do you see in the industry that gets your blood pumping?
Everything. I love the medium. I love games. I just got a code for Pyre. I'm probably not supposed to talk about that. And I've just been playing Splatoon.
Don't worry, nobody listens to us anyway.
And it's exciting every time. And what's frustrating for me, and I'm sure for anybody, Jeff, and anybody in my position that has had the opportunity to employ people on a regular basis to keep up with all of this, is that I can't keep up with all of it. That's the one frustration that I have right now, is that I'm basically being begged every day to cover things like we used to be able to cover them, and I can't. And that's frustrating, because it deserves to have different colleagues of mine go to studios to uncover more and get some exclusive interviews on a regular cycle of repeat. And it can't. And there are companies that are doing it, like IGN. I know they have a show too that just it's launching, I think, today on the Disney XD channel, and I wish them well. I hope it's good. And there are a few places that are able to kind of navigate through all of this, but so much content out there. And I think it's great, but so much content out there is pundits and experts and people in game rooms just talking to the camera and sort of speculating or pontificating or there's a lot of hearsay, as opposed to connecting and communicating. There's a lot of hostility and a lot of anger too, which really that it bothers me, because there shouldn't be. Like, I know that game makers are making a lot of mistakes, and the DLC and the patches and the amount of passwords, and there's a lot of frustrations around and it comes down to that inclusiveness and that accessibility. It's a major problem. There's three major problems. There's a discoverability issue. There's too much stuff, so there's a bit of there's too much choice, which is exciting, but if you don't have,
it's overwhelming.
Yeah, if you don't have the apparatus around that to help guide people to different things that might be encouraging for them. And I know it exists in totality when you can figure out what YouTuber and what Twitch streamer is appropriate for your tastes, but you have to put in the legwork to find those people. So that's one of the issues. And the other issue is, the inclusivity, the idea that, the stores and the communities and the discussions around games can be a little hostile. They can be a little less than friendly to everyone, and I think that needs to evolve. I think that you kind of have to think of mature entertainment industries and recognize how much evolution they went through and this goes right to the sporting leagues and everything. How did they become a part of everyday kind of subsistence? Like, everyone needs to know about movies and TV shows and on some level, and I don't mean to paint everybody as obsessive for all that stuff, but I just feel like games have just carved out all of these different ways to exclude people, and they should flip that around and say, we're going to make it easier, we're going to make it less expensive, we're going to make it more consumer friendly. And I think that third thing is about that accessibility. Like, it's still too hard to just plug something in and know if it's going to work all the time. Like, you take home a game and you stick it in and you're going to wait 45 minutes before you go and did I get the right
compatible machine with this version?
Yeah.
So many of the voices, it seems to me at least, like you said, there's a lot of cynicism, there's a lot of anger. And I'm drawn to people like you, like Jeff Kanata, like the people that are just positive and they love what they do and they love this industry. But I was wondering, how do you approach when you get an assignment or a review of something that you really do dislike? One of my favorite reviews of yours recently was the last Transformers movie. It's like, how do you approach when you get an assignment for something that you really just dislike?
You still seem like you're having fun enjoying and reviewing bullshit. You're like the happiest guy ever. Is that a Canadian thing?
I always in my mind is that appreciation for how privileged I am to be able to do what I do, and you guys are dads and this, right? There are real problems and real issues and real things that make adulting tough, and to be able to be indulgent enough to escape into this medium, no matter how shitty it might be, it's always a privilege, and I never forget that. And the other thing that I don't forget, and I think Kanata probably, appreciates this too, when you build something from nothing, which is what I did with Electric Playground, and he did with Totally Rad Show, and about 75 other things that he's built since then. you come to appreciate how difficult it is to build anything, and how hard it is to get people to pay attention to you, and so I have mad respect for any weirdo dreamer, crazy person that thinks that they're going to build something that people are going to give a shit about. And so I generally have respect for that creative process, even when it comes time to talk about the Transformers. And it was a terrible, ridiculous movie, but you can't fault the efforts of the visual effects teams that probably killed themselves to make that movie look as shiny as it did. It was ludicrous, but it still looked good. So I try to not forget that element, even when I hate something or it frustrates me or I bang my head. I recognize that people don't set out to be terrible. They don't try to piss us off or rip us off.
Hey, look at us. We've been here 3 years. We weren't trying to be this bad. It just happened. We just worked at it.
You just got to have fun too, right? Just got to enjoy it.
So if you're not having fun, what's the point?
Right. Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about parenting. John and I had a discussion just a couple nights ago about how there are like certain car insurance commercials that we can't watch without crying. Like being a dad like fundamentally changes your perspective on everything. How did that change you as like a gamer for fun, and then also somebody who analyzes the industry? Obviously, there's a lot of really bad stuff out there for kids, and a lot of really good stuff. I would argue there's not as much content aimed at children these days as like there used to be. How did that change your view of the gaming scene?
Well, it made me much more empathetic and sensitive, I think, about the frailties of the people in these stories. Like The Last of Us was a pretty heavy-hitting piece of fiction for me, and I felt the same way about Logan. I think I Am Alive, where there was a kid that was hurt. I remember Game of Thrones, there was a baby killed. And the younger me would have been offended and shocked, but maybe not as stabbed in the gut, by it, and feeling complete, like, I know I'm making you both uncomfortable even just talking about that stuff. I can see it. And that's, I think, a commonality with parents, and obviously I've got a pretty big group of game making and game covering friends that I've known for a long time in the industry on Facebook, and it is interesting to read the reflections and the observations of things like press conferences at E3, where there's ultra-violent game after ultra-violent game, and I think there is a it's not a softening, but I think that there is a more empathetic kind of element in all of us as we get older, that this starts to blossom a bit. We start to recognize the frailty of our existence, and how terrible it is to just throw it away, whether it's in fiction or not. And also I think there is an ability to understand that, especially when it comes to games, is that they can offer more than that too. So there is that frustration of, no, you can go deeper with this. So even if you are having incredibly violent sequences and consequences, like in The Last of Us, it's from an emotional truth that is just devastating to experience, but you crave that, and you never want it to end, and you can appreciate it to profound levels, But I have been also finding how joyous it is, because I haven't really, like, Ruby's only 5, my daughter's 5, so she hasn't really picked up the controller and started playing stuff on her own. She's a little hesitant to do that, but we've played some games together, and I've been able to kind of see this fiction and these worlds through her eyes, and it's really amazing. Like, she will remember details about characters and races, and you know, the sort of elaborate lore in Zelda Breath of the Wild more than I will, you know, and she'll remember that we saw something over on that mountain and we got to go back to that mountain. And it's incredible for me to see that, you know.
The day
That's such a familiar.
The day my 3-year-old son picked up a broom and hit me with it and called it his master sword, it was like, I've done something right.
Yeah, and my daughter, you know, I'd be playing, and like you said, she would remember all these details far better than I could. You know, Dad, don't you remember talking to that one guy in that one village, this village over here? And I couldn't believe how much she was absorbing it, and not just, you know, even when we were playing the game, but like when I'd be tucking her into bed at night, and she'd be like, "Dad, tell me a story about Zelda and Link." And it was just like,
how old is she?
Was 9.
She's 9. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was completely engrossed in that.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? And my daughter's always been like, go back to the Zoras. It's like we spent so much time with the Zoras, kid. We're not back to the Zoras anymore. We're Zora'd out. No,
don't you understand? This game is 100 hours long.
It's I have a newfound appreciation for. I always have been a fan because I'm still a giant dorky kid. You know, like you guys know, I'm a huge collector of all this stuff. I have toys everywhere. But I really have, like, escalated in my appreciation for those Lego games and Dimensions, and I love Disney Infinity, and the Skylanders games really grew on me. I know that the obsessiveness of collecting all that stuff can get a bit too insane.
I'm surrounded by those toys right now.
Yeah, and I feel like the industry as a whole should just stop doing annual releases of everything.
Mm-hmm.
That would make the world so much better, right? Like, you would make people want your thing again, as opposed to that. Oh yeah, there's a new Assassin's Creed out right now, and
it almost turns into like a chore. It's like, well, I need to buy this year, and
you don't have time to appreciate anything anymore. Where there's such a quick turnaround, and there's so much that as hardcore gamers we want to get to. Like, just give us time to breathe and appreciate. Like, I haven't appreciated a game like Zelda in I don't even know how long, because I just shut everything else out. I just decided I'm not going to get any other game right now. I'm going to live in this world. Both my son and my wife, who's not a gamer, really enjoyed experiencing that with me. It became a family thing. And there's just something really nice about letting a game breathe and taking the time to appreciate it in a way that's so hard to do these days.
Zelda's a big reset switch, man. No pun intended. There is a lot that the business is learning from that game right now. It is about quiet moments and discovery and not leading you by the hand. And there's so much maturity in that design, so much surprising maturity. And I've had this conversation with so many people. I mean, I just tweeted out, I think one of you or two of you guys liked my tweet, but I said it's my favorite game of all time. I've been thinking about it and gestating and thinking, is it too soon? And then I'm playing it again to get into some of the DLC with Ruby. I beat it, and then I kept playing it. I'm at 115, 120 hours. And I'm savoring it. I love every second, and I'm still discovering things. And it is just about getting lost in that space, and I think it can be an incredibly valuable private experience. But I think one of the great things about that game is capacity to be shared with other people is tremendous. You know, I've played through the whole thing pretty much with my daughter, but at the beginning of it, I was reviewing it at the same time my friend Johnny Millennium from the Happy Console Gamer Show was. And we were hanging out like we were two teenagers playing the game and passing the controller back and forth. And it just felt incredible, you know? And Nintendo, I don't even know if they know what they did with this machine, but they really boiled it down, right? They really just made it this, especially that combo with Zelda and the Switch. It's just so irrefutably fantastic. It's such like, if you hand that to anyone, they are going to be impressed, you know. And then Mario Kart is also really great, even if it's a remake. And I loved ARMS. I thought they really killed it with this cool new fighting thing that I'd never played before. And I'm enjoying Splatoon a hell of a lot too, even though it feels familiar. It's you know, the public's responding. I hope that I hope that momentum continues, and I hope that the pace at which they're releasing these pretty terrific games from their studios continues. But I also hope that it influences the rest of the companies out there. I think that it was really smart for UB to, I mean, let's face it, they had the most emotional press conference at E3 this year, I think, with developers crying up on stage, sort of, reaching moments that they had worked their lives for. That was amazing. But that break that they took with Assassin's Creed, even though they made that terrible fucking movie. So bad. But they took the break, and now I'm excited to play Origins again, and the stuff that they've been doing around Rainbow Six has been smart. Just adding new content and sort of growing that as it's been out there. I hope that the other big guys are learning from some of those things, and we get that accessibility and that inclusiveness.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So with your career in journalism, gaming journalism, from what I read and what I hear, because we're not real journalists here, we're just
no, we're not even pretend journalists.
like Tony Stark said, we're just bloggers. A big part of your job is long hours and traveling all across the world to these different events covering games.
Yeah.
How tough is it to do all that and still make time for what's important back at home, with your family?
It's been I think it's one of the things that I've been able to do is bring my wife and my daughter with me on a lot of my trips.
Yeah.
And we've been able to see a large part of the world together through this. And like she came to London when we went to, both came to London when we went for Assassin's Creed Syndicate, when we went to go see, to DICE to go see Star Wars Battlefront, they came to Stockholm. Ruby's been to Paris a couple of times.
That just must be amazing for her. Does she appreciate at that young age what she's really getting to do?
Yeah, she used to call it the Orport. Are we going to the Orport, Dad? and she really loves travel. And, so she came to Cannes with me. We went down to cover MIPCOM, the TV festival down there. I did some interviews. And so my wife and my daughter came to Cannes. So we trained all across France, and we've been up to Edinburgh twice, and that was for fun. But also what happened last year, which was kind of interesting, is it was the first year that we weren't in full production with a big team and lots of sort of at-home type responsibilities. I had always been able to travel, but my wife, who also helps me run the company, has also had to deal with a tremendous amount of sort of office management and staff stuff and paperwork, and she has to work really hard to kind of keep the machine going. But last year, because we didn't have the big team, we didn't have a broadcast contract, it was our first time that we both kind of looked up and we went, well, we can do a little traveling right now. Why don't we go and see some places that we've never really spent time in? And so we went to Kelowna, which is in British Columbia here, and we went to up to Nelson, BC, and out to Ottawa. I'd never been to Ottawa, which is the capital of our country, and we just explored a little bit, and I kept doing the rundown. That was the cool thing, is I could do our rundown segment no matter where we were. But my daughter's been very fortunate to be able to be a part of that. Now, there is this, I try to keep my job as much within the confines of the hours of 9 to 6 as I can, 9 to 5, 9 to 6, and then I spend family time. And then generally my daughter is asleep by 9:30, sometimes 10. And then that's when I sneak back down and try to stay awake and play some games and watch a show or a movie or something like that. I can't be the person that can just be 12 hours a day every day consuming this stuff and then reporting on it or reviewing it every day the next day. I just can't do that. It just would be it would end my marriage, and my daughter would never see me, right? So I'm not going to do that. but I think that that's just an unhealthy way to kind of live your life in general, and I think that is what leads to a lot of people burning out on the coverage side of things to begin with, you know.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the deadlines are excruciatingly difficult, and I've gone through all of that. I've put in my time doing like that kind of thing over many years, you know. And so if I had a bigger budget to hire some more people right now, I would spread the work out a little bit, and so there would be more voices and more reviewers. And I would do my best to kind of find as much balance as I can. But I think a huge chunk of it is and Ruby's just about to enter kindergarten in September, so I don't know if that's going to be available to us sort of on a go-forward basis. But up until this point, she's been able to travel quite a bit, and we've been very, very privileged to be able to do that. So
that's fantastic.
It's been a kind of a family effort. My wife has always supported me, but my daughter kind of supports me in being this person as well. You know, one of the cool things that's happened recently is we've been working with Nintendo on some on-location shoots around some of their games that have aired in theaters across Canada, Cineplex theaters across Canada. And I went to a movie with Ruby, and the video popped up on the big movie screen, and she said, "That's my dad! That's my dad!" And people were looking at me, and I was like trying to be low key, but of course I was curious to see how it all looked and everything.
Right.
But it was surreal. Yeah, it's very weird to hear your kid, my 5-year-old, say, "Are you working on Electric Playground today? Are you shooting the Rundown, Dad?" It's a surreal thing, you know. It's like hearing your kid talk about your kid from a different life, you know, in some ways. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you've had obviously a very interesting story. There have been ups, there have been downs, but at the end of it, you seem very content, very happy with. I mean, I don't know. I don't even think legacy is a small word or too big of a word, because you've put yourself in the homes of so many people. And those of us who have, you know, been gamers all of our lives, we've watched you over the years, and we feel like we know you. I mean, obviously there's so much to the personalities behind the camera that we don't know, but we certainly appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and to get to know you a little bit better. As we start to round out our time here, I just want to ask you what your opinion is on the year so far. For me, it seems like it's been an embarrassment of riches lately, where there have been so many good games, so much great film entertainment. Obviously, you're doing Film Fury now with Johnny Millennium. You seem really settled in a great place. You seem content with what you're producing. Obviously, the industries are cranking out hit after hit. Where do you see this year stacking up in a year of great entertainment?
It's a year of great entertainment. You hit the nail on the head. It's 2017. One of the things that struck me is how much great content was coming out of Japanese studios at the beginning of the year. It felt like every game, like Last Guardian and
Resident Evil,
and it's just like boom, Persona 5 and Zelda, of course, and it just felt like, wow, man, like the Japanese. I don't mean to throw Phil Fish under the bus, but that comment of Japanese developers can't make good games from a few years ago, that bubbled up again as I kept playing a fantastic Japanese game after another, Nier Automata.
It was the 90s all over again.
It was great, yes, and I felt like E3 was actually mostly underwhelming, apart from a few. The
highlight of getting to meet us was
that was the best thing. Absolutely. But there was very little in the conferences that was really shocking, and we had that last year. Like even Xbox's 2 machines in one conference was pretty shocking, and all of what Sony was showing off, and now we understand that it was all for 2018 games. But Anthem looks good, but that's probably 2019. I think the back half of this year is honestly going to have a really challenging time competing with the first half of this year. We've had so much good content already. As for movies, yeah, I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and Logan and Spider-Man Homecoming and Wonder Woman, 4 superhero movies that are all amazing. Alien Covenant sucked. There's been like Transformers. Lately, it's felt pretty cool. The Big Sick, the Baby Driver movie. We'll see what happens with the end of the year. Obviously, everybody's looking at Star Wars. I can't wait for Thor. Johnny's always like, there's a Thor 3? How did we get to the Thor 3? And it's like, yeah, I can't wait for Thor 3.
It looks batshit crazy.
I love that kind of stuff, It does feel, Iron Fist on Netflix was... Every time I try to watch that show, I fall asleep, man.
I think I got 3 episodes in and couldn't do it.
I mean, it does feel like we have like if we were comic nerds, I don't know if you guys were, but if we were comic nerds, we have had every sort of hope and desire satiated in the last little while. And now it's just like we're at the buffet just going, oh my God, I can't eat anymore. No more of this. But we are getting a lot more of it. It's all coming, Yeah, it's already been ridiculously fun. And you're right, I do feel very, very, I can't ask for more, like I feel very fortunate. That doesn't mean that I'm not ambitious and don't have some big ideas about sort of next steps, and I'm working on some of that stuff. But it's, I realized a dream, and I was aware of that even in our first season. I remember, I made $1,000 an episode in our first year on television. And that was it. I made $13,000 for that first year. But I remember walking home. I was crossing a bridge here in Vancouver, and I just felt like, holy crap, like I had a thing that I had in my head, and I'm making that. And I just felt so grateful, and that has persisted, So that's how I feel today.
That's important to find that thing. I mean, John and I, we do this for fun. I mean, we both work full-time jobs doing other things, and when we got to go to E3 this year, like, we just had to stop and look at each other like, this is just something that we did to kind of feed our soul, and it grew enough where thankfully people have been listening and enjoy what we do, and it got us somewhere that we've been dreaming of since we were teenagers. So,
well, the minute you take any of this stuff for granted, anything in your life, your family, your health, anything, you take it for granted, is the minute that you're going to have that slapped in your face. You've got to remember how lucky you are to have every minute that you have, and you got to celebrate, man. Like, you don't know when it's done, right? So enjoy it while you got it. And, I've seen a lot of people just squander those opportunities by thinking they can't see outside of their moment.
Right.
And
right.
you kind of have to pull the camera back and recognize, Christ. I mean, it's pretty easy to get dark now too, right? It's pretty easy to just look at a map and go, holy, those people are screwed, just by the geography that they happen to have been born in. They've got issues that they are going to contend with for their whole life. And so anybody that's on the other side of something like that can enjoy the indulgences of the entertainment space and the luxuries that we have. And if you can't find a way to appreciate that and enjoy that, then I'm being overly general here, but it's I have always had the ability to kind of pull back a bit and appreciate that things are good.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, thank you not only for joining us for this, but thank you also for 20 years of positivity. Is that a real word? Positivity?
Almost.
Positivity.
Yeah. Positivity.
There you go. Don't worry, we'll edit that.
It'll be better.
Thank you so much for all you've done for all these years. And thank you for being with us today.
Oh, this was awesome, guys. Thank you for having patience. I know that we've been talking about doing this for a long time, and I'm very flattered, and I would love to come back sometime if you guys will have me.
Absolutely.
Invitation's always there. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right,
Well,
thank
good
you,
luck
Victor.
with everything that you're working on, and don't forget to have a great time. And, you know, like, one thing that I will tell you guys is that the business, as it was for me, and I'm sure it remains, and I think you guys are discovering that, you're at E3, it's incredibly open, and it's still defining itself, and there is ego, and there are people that are, you know, harder to reach than others, for sure. But generally, people are pretty receptive and responsive and friendly and open. And you know, I think you guys should extend that opportunity to have more guests. And I think you'll be surprised at who shows up and who you have a good time with.
Definitely.
Great advice. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, you guys.
All right, have a
Thanks
good
a
night.
lot.
All right, take care.
Thanks.
Bye.